Headlamp beams bounced across slash pine and palmetto scrub as two men in matching community safety windbreakers grabbed my arms and marched me into the woods behind Magnolia Crest. A folding card table waited in a small clearing like some kind of suburban altar. On it sat a jurat stamp, a mason jar full of pens, and an HOA letterhead deed transfer form already filled out with my name in thick black ink. The woman in the designer trench coat stepped forward and snapped open her leather portfolio with practiced authority. "Just sign, Mr. Rourke," she said with false sweetness dripping from every word. "You will keep your mailbox. We are not monsters." An owl hooted somewhere in the darkness. My phone, tucked in my back pocket, had silently dialed 911 exactly 5 minutes earlier. My name is Mateo Rourke. I am 37 years old, a software architect by trade, an indifferent lawnmower by necessity, and a devoted espresso snob by choice. I bought the brick ranch house on Osprey Loop because I wanted to sit on my back porch, stare at the retention pond, and be left completely alone. Then I met Lorna Pike. Lorna is the HOA president of Magnolia Crest, and she wields the community bylaws like throwing stars. Her vanity license plates read Covenant. Her emails always end with warmly comma enforcement. My crimes against her vision of suburban perfection were modest at best. I planted drought-tolerant native flowers that she deemed off-palate. I installed a cedar hive box for pollinators that I clearly labeled not bees, but apparently that was not good enough. I even had a slightly faded American flag that I actually replaced right on schedule. None of it mattered. Lorna decided I represented what she called non-compliant culture, and she started circling my property like a Roomba with a personal vendetta. The violation letters escalated into full-blown opera. Violation number 1 accused me of aggressive xeriscaping. Violation number 2 complained about an unauthorized box-like structure harboring winged livestock. Violation number 3 demanded I provide provenance for my flag because apparently flag etiquette was unclear. Then Lorna introduced her Community Guardians program, which consisted of 2 steroidal cousins in matching windbreakers. Brent had a neck tattoo and carried a clipboard everywhere. Owen wore aviator sunglasses that never left his face, even at night. They patrolled our quiet cul-de-sac in a golf cart outfitted with siren lights purchased from eBay. They measured my grass height with an actual ruler and photographed my trash can when it dared to breathe fresh air for 11 minutes after garbage pickup. Lorna also started spreading rumors at her Aqua Zumba class that I was squatting in my own home and that my deed was never properly recorded with the county. When I ignored her escalating fines, she called for what she termed a special quiet title initiative meeting. She prepared a full slideshow presentation titled Reclaiming Our Community from Paperwork Errors, complete with stock photo images of gavels and castles. She claimed the HOA could correct defects in property ownership through what she called voluntary quitclaim deeds. Voluntary. The word hung in the air like a threat. She did not get the votes she needed from the other board members. That is when Lorna got creative and desperate. On a sticky Thursday evening in late September, Brent and Owen appeared at my front door with what Lorna called her field notary. This was a bored-looking 22-year-old woman named Mandy who carried a mobile notary stamping kit and had a phone case absolutely covered in rhinestones. Lorna stood behind them like a theater director positioning her actors. "There has been a recording discrepancy with your property title," she announced in a voice that dripped with fake concern. "If you simply sign a quitclaim deed transferring ownership to the association, we will lease your home back to you at a preferred resident rate. 30 years. Fully renewable." I actually laughed out loud, which turned out to be a terrible tactical error. Brent stepped forward aggressively, and suddenly my front threshold became a very gray area of property law. I was escorted, and I use that term loosely, onto my own driveway and then frog marched toward the woods behind the retention pond so we could discuss this privately. That is apparently how you describe kidnapping when your windbreaker says community safety on the back. Here is what Lorna Pike did not know about quiet men who work in software architecture. We prepare for system failures. We build redundancies into everything. The exact moment Brent grabbed my elbow, my smartwatch detected the sudden movement and elevated heart rate and automatically sent an SOS alert to the county sheriff with my precise GPS coordinates. My video doorbell, actually 2 of them positioned at different angles, had recorded Brent physically grabbing my arm, Owen blocking my only exit path, and Lorna saying in crystal clear audio, "Get him to the trees where we can handle this properly." My backyard shed security camera captured the entire parade across my lawn. My car dashcam, which I always leave running on motion detection mode, filmed the card table setup like it was a nature documentary about suburban crime. Also, my neighbor Ruth, a retired postal inspector with excellent instincts, happened to be watering her succulent collection on her front porch. She was filming everything in 4K resolution on her tablet. Mandy unfolded the card table with shaking hands and blew glitter residue off her notary stamp. Lorna slid the quitclaim document across the table with a smile that could freeze gasoline. "No pressure, Mr. Rourke," she said smoothly, "but we cannot guarantee security patrol response times if you choose to decline our generous offer tonight." That was when two county sheriff deputies stepped out from the tree line with their flashlights cutting through the darkness like spotlights on a stage. "Hands where we can see them," the taller deputy commanded. Brent immediately tried the private security defense. "We are licensed community safety officers," he announced with far too much confidence. The deputy slowly nodded toward their modified golf cart with its ridiculous eBay lights. "Is that so?" he replied with devastating calm. I pulled out my phone and handed over Lorna's quitclaim document, the HOA letterhead forms, and the text message she had sent me 3 hours earlier. It read, "Bring your government ID. We will handle the recording wink face emoji." That single emoji was doing an enormous amount of felonious heavy lifting in the eyes of the law. The deputies separated all of us immediately. They bagged the notary stamp as evidence. They read Lorna, Brent, and Owen their Miranda rights in voices that suggested they had done this many times before. They politely asked Mandy if she understood that notarizing a coerced signature in the woods at night was textbook notary malpractice plus what the deputy called a sampler platter of additional crimes. Mandy started crying so hard that rhinestones fell off her phone case. The deputies called the county recorder's office on speakerphone right there in the woods, and the night clerk, a woman who sounded like she rivaled Zeus on a thundercloud, explained with audible relish that an HOA absolutely cannot quiet title through intimidation and forged transfers. Lorna tried desperately to pivot her story. "We were simply conducting an informal community mediation session," she insisted with panic creeping into her voice. The deputy raised one eyebrow and gestured slowly at the headlamp equipment, the mason jar full of pens, and the printed document with quitclaim Mateo Rourke typed across the top in 24-point Arial font. By the next morning, our local newspaper ran a front-page headline that read, "HOA enforcers attempt midnight property transfer, sheriff intervenes." The article quoted Ruth extensively. "They were literally about to notarize a tree," she told the reporter. "The security camera footage went viral in our small town within hours. I learned that my left profile is definitely not my most flattering angle, but I also learned that karma works efficiently when you have documentation." The consequences arrived by certified mail over the following week. Lorna Pike was formally charged with attempted coercion, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit filing of a false instrument. Brent and Owen were each charged with kidnapping, criminal trespass, and impersonating licensed security personnel, since the county discovered their credentials were laminated library cards. Mandy had her notary commission permanently revoked before lunch that same day. The HOA liability insurance company sent a letter that essentially said they cover fence disputes, not felonies, and immediately canceled the policy. A judge issued a permanent restraining order with a special clause. Lorna Pike was barred from initiating, directing, or participating in any real property transaction within 500 feet of a wooded area. The county appointed an emergency receiver to investigate the HOA finances and found that Lorna's consulting fees were actually her personal pickleball league dues charged to the association. At her arraignment, when the prosecutor read the charges out loud in open court and mentioned the words Woods, notary, and quitclaim deed in the same sentence, Lorna's face turned the color of old concrete. The judge set her bail at $50,000 and told her attorney that this was the most bizarre case he had seen in 23 years on the bench. Lorna stood there in her designer trench coat, stunned into complete silence for what I imagine was the first time in her entire life, as the reality of facing 5 years in state prison finally crashed down on her like a collapsing HOA covenant.